Hello and welcome to Clem's Content Corner, the number one place for line of duty content on YouTube. Today we are going to be digging into a mystery from the show that might have been overlooked, given all of the other twists that were going on around the same time, and that mystery is who killed PC Rod Kennedy. To recap, Kennedy was a police constable serving on Danny Waldron's VC5 team in the third season, taking part in Operation Damson with the job of preventing gangland executions. After Kennedy gives a false statement about the shooting of Ronan Murphy to keep him in line with the rest of the team and is intimidated by Danny Waldron on a couple of occasions, Rod then finds himself implicated in Danny's murder, being part of a struggle that saw Waldron fatally shot in the neck. Rod appears to know the truth about what really happened to Danny and how the struggle came to be, with his guilt forcing him to confront Harry Baines, viewing him as the only guilty party, who was dragging Jackie and himself down with him. With Kate having unsettled Rod earlier, pushing from the inside while the rest of the AC-12 team push from the outside, as is the usual strategy, Rod seems to be strongly considering telling his version of events and breaking from the story upon which the three had agreed. The next time we see Rod, he has been hanged. So what exactly happened here? Well, looking at all the possibilities, it first appeared to be a suicide. That seemed plausible. It had been a traumatic time, first having to come to terms with the death of a suspect, then being grilled by AC-12, Danny was getting intimidating, it was revealed that his relationship with Jackie had been strained before the events of the series, he witnesses Danny's death and wonders if he could have prevented it, he's grilled by AC-12 again, this time on suspicion of murder. It's easy to see how he could have become overwhelmed and taken his own life. But then the post-mortem showed that Kennedy had been knocked unconscious prior to his hanging. Could he have simply regained consciousness and then proceeded to hang himself? It's possible, but it doesn't really seem all that likely, and it was later treated as a murder investigation, so I'm pretty much discounting Rod's death as a suicide. The only person ever arrested on suspicion of Rod's murder was Harry Baines, who we did see meet with Kennedy at the warehouse where Rod's body was found the next day. Kennedy was threatening to change his story, seemed to blame Harry for Danny's death, and got physically aggressive, so I think Jed set us up to believe that Harry had been Rod's killer initially, and whilst the story never outright exonerates Harry, it doesn't look likely that Harry was the one that did it either. When talking to Dot by phone, Dot doesn't doubt that Harry is innocent, but remarks that the way he is telling his story, admitting that there was a physical altercation but not a fatal one, makes him sound guilty. So I don't think that it was Harry either. As for Dot, I can see why some might think he did this himself. The same type of rope was found in Dot's car later in the series, and he would have feared Rod turning on Danny as it may have led the investigation closer to himself. But thematically, that wouldn't fit very well, as his shooting of Lindsay Denton was so strongly implied to be the first time he'd personally murdered someone directly. He was visibly shaken by having to kill, and as Denton said herself, other people had always done Dot's dirty work with never a speck of blood on his hands. From the OCG's point of view, Dot was too valuable to risk on something like that, as a senior police officer would be a lot harder to replace than someone down the ranks, so whilst I expect Dot organised the killing of Rod Kennedy, I doubt he laid a hand on him himself. So then who was it? Some unnamed pawn? Perhaps, but again I would have my doubts. This needed to go smoothly. If forensics could identify a culprit, that would have led them closer to Dot, and he would have been desperate to avoid that. So he needed someone who knew what they were doing, someone who knew how to do a covert operation and leave no trace. The OCG didn't have as many bent coppers at their disposal in the first 3 seasons as they did from season 4 onwards. It's actually been one of the biggest criticisms of the recent seasons because it's getting harder to believe that there could be this many bent coppers on the one police force. But as we saw with numerous characters in season 3, including Harry and Dot himself, the OCG really do milk everything they can out of those who are in their debt, using them again and again and then usually killing them off when they get too close to being found out. So this probably wasn't a one-off, and we've probably seen this bent copper working for the OCG elsewhere. Dot was also only in charge of one syndicate of the OCG, taking over from Tommy Hunter, turning the OCG against him because of his immunity, requiring Hunter to inform on his colleagues in crime. This brings me to a bent copper who assisted Dot numerous times, but also one you may have forgotten about, having only a line or two in the script. It's this guy, the AFO who was ominously behind Steve as he returned his Glock, and presumably altered the paperwork, who stormed into Lindsay Denton's room to arrest Steve, and who was the recipient of Dot's urgent exit required text leading the armed chase scene before being gunned down by Kate Fleming. Known only as Lambert, Lambert was also present when Kennedy's death was announced to the AFOs, and he didn't bat an eye, so even though it's never been entirely confirmed in the story, if I was placing bets on who killed Rod Kennedy, Lambert would fit the bill. He worked with Dot's syndicate of the OCG, we saw him kill another police officer without hesitation when necessary, he readily followed all of Dot's orders, he was a trained AFO and would have known how to avoid leaving evidence at a murder scene. It all seems to fall into place. So that's a wrap. If you have any other ideas for videos, drop a comment below and I'll see what I can do. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and most importantly, have a great day.